and welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new here. I'm nervous, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I've got a handful of theories under my belt now, and I want to take some time to go through some of your comments and talk about some of the issues with my theories, as well as just some things that I didn't explain well in my videos, or things I wish I'd said but just didn't. I'm trying so hard to make this exact thing right here not happen. I'm so sorry. I'm new to the world of publicly theorizing about FNAF, so I feel like this is a good checkpoint for me to just kind of go back and look at my progress, or what progress I'd like to make in the future. As always, please remember to like the video and consider subscribing if you haven't already and become a part of the nervous system. I don't have a script today, so we're unscripted, just sort of talking. So I hope that that's a fun, enjoyable environment for you to be in, but if not, I'm so sorry, and scripted content will return next week. I got very lucky today because they're doing construction right outside the store, and it happened to rain really badly today, so they're not out there doing anything, and I was actually able to record. If I tried to record yesterday, it was such a disaster. But we're gonna go ahead and get into this, so this was my first theory video, and I had no script. I had an outline of what I wanted to say, but I didn't have an idea of how I was going to present the information. If you haven't seen the video, of course, it's linked above, but I will give a brief summary. Basically, I propose that Gregory is Jeremy's son. Not the original Jeremy or Jeremy Fitzgerald, but the game dev Jeremy from Help Wanted 1, who slices off his face with a guillotine paper cutter. Due to Gregory's clear importance to the franchise, I felt it made more sense for him to have some sort of familial connection to the Pizzaplex. There were a lot of similar comments in the comment section that made me think like, oh, I really needed to explain that better. So first, I'm going to go over what I think was kind of the major oversight in my theory that I should have addressed. And that question is, why did I not consider Tape Girl as Gregory's mother or familiar tie to the franchise? Why did I immediately go to Jeremy? And I wish I had included this in the original video, because I definitely thought about it, but I felt it was, making the video too long, or it was just superfluous information, or just whatever. But either way, I didn't put it in the video, and I wish that I had, so I'm here to explain now. FNAF through and through is stories about dads and their kids. FNAF very rarely explores maternal figures, mothers, grandmothers. They do show up in the franchise, but much, much less prevalently. That wouldn't necessarily make it impossible that Tape Girl is Gregory's familial connection, but to me it was just more likely to be Jeremy based on the history of FNAF and the kind of familial relations we explore most within the franchise. But I do agree that there's no more evidence suggesting that it's Jeremy than Tape Girl. It's more about themes that exist within the franchise. This next comment is one that I feel helps support a suggestion that I made at the end of my Fandom's Forgotten Child video about Cassie and Gregory possibly being brother and sister. I'm going to read the second part first, because the first part of their comment is actually another point that I want to make separately from this. I was really getting some Hansel and Gretel vibes from Candy Cadet's story in Help Wanted 2, which struck me as a bit random. If Gregory and Cassie turn out to be siblings, those vibes would make sense and actually recontextualize the story a little, and possibly the junk story it first plays. I think it's great to call out the idea that the Candy Cadet's first story could be hinting at the idea that we are still telling the story of a family. I think it would be a great through line for the series to come back to that energy of telling the story of a family by only kind of showing us a little bits and pieces of each character separately, and then us having to put together who those family members are and connect the dots, basically. There are a number of similarities between Candy Cadet's story in Help Wanted 2 and the classic Grimm Brothers fairy tale of Hansel and Gretel. Both stories feature a witch living in the woods who ultimately captures victims and cooks them in her oven. I think it is very good evidence to suggest that there is a brother and sister dynamic somewhere within the franchise, even if it's not clear who it is, and it could change depending on who you believe the story is about. That being said, let's move on to another really good point that this same commenter made, as well as somebody else. I do think Gregory being Cassie's brother is a plausible idea. It would offer a good explanation as to why Gregory was seeing a therapist through Fazbear Entertainment. That was one thing that bugged me about Gregory being patient 46. If Gregory was an orphan, being either fostered or adopted by Jeremy, a Fazbear employee, it makes a good amount of sense. And then this is the other comment. Who goes to an abandoned pizzaplex for a friend? Let's be honest, nobody. However, what if Gregory is her brother? Yeah, Gregory doesn't seem to have parents in the active sense. How does Gregory enter the Pizzaplex therapy session? His adopted father. He is the one who adopted Gregory, stimulated him in his hacking hobby, and tried to help him by giving him access to therapy. Maybe Gregory was taken away from Jeremy after the traumatic face incident, after which Jeremy was deemed unsuitable to take care of him. Thus, out of kindness, he was offered therapy from his father's workplace. And then they edit it to see where I actually also suggested that the two were siblings. First of all, I thought it was awesome that this person came up with the idea that Gregory and Cassie were siblings from watching my video before I even got to that point. To me, that lent credence to the idea. But also, both of these people made an excellent point that if I had spent a little more time thinking about this theory rather than just throwing it up there with the outline, I probably would have had this thought as well, because that is also something I've been frustrated with about this whole patient 46 and being, with Gregory being in therapy with Vanessa. We know that patient 46 was sort of following Vanessa and taking care of anybody who got too close. But you have to think that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for a school therapist to also be doing therapy in a completely different business. Usually a school has a guidance counselor that works strictly with the school. They're not taking patients outside of that environment. And Fazbear Entertainment, if they had a therapist on hand or guidance counselors on hand, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for them to be covering anybody in that facility who needs something and also a public school. If he was going to therapy, it would make less sense about it being a school therapist and more sense about it being more of a personal therapist, or him also getting therapy through Fazbear Entertainment. I do believe that there's something in the books about him going to a school therapist. I think that this is a lot more solid of an idea that Gregory is connected to the Pizzaplex and is getting therapy through that. And it would make so much sense if he was getting therapy because of the incident that happened with his father, assuming his father is Jeremy, and you know. So those were some of my extra thoughts on the fandom's Forgotten Child, my very first theory that I uploaded to YouTube. Now we're going to move on to one of my my most popular theory. By a long shot. My Mxes theory blew up in a way that I really didn't expect it to, and honestly, it doesn't have that many views in the grand scheme of things, but for being my second video, I certainly wasn't expecting it, and in ways I was a bit embarrassed. That being said, I did write a script for this one, but not the first time I filmed it. The first time I filmed this video, I did it the exact same way as the first video. I filmed them one right after the other. Fortunately, my original recording was totally useless because my microphone was bugging out the whole time. And you can see in both of these videos where I have to go back in and add a fair amount of voiceover because I didn't say everything I needed to say in the video. I didn't do a very good job of scripting it out. To briefly summarize, this theory is about the Mystic Hippo line, do you ever look at your hands? I mean, really look at your hands, and how I thought maybe that could be alluding to the fact that Cassie's dad goes on to inhabit Mxes or even become the Mxes program that may have existed before him, but his digital consciousness goes on to possess that in some way. This comment I saw at least 2 times, and when I read it, I was so mad that I didn't take more time to research this video idea before I just threw it out there. But at the same time, I'm glad, because I would have overthought it forever and ever and never put it out there. So you know what? I'm here to take the L, but this is an excellent point. It would have done so much to strengthen my argument, and I feel my video is weaker by not having this point in there. The way Mxes moves or teleports around reminds me of how the player in Help Wanted 2 teleports around in Princess Quest 4. What an excellent point! Mxes in Ruin moves exactly like you would in a VR system where he teleports from one spot to another. We don't see him fluidly move. It makes a lot of sense. That's a very good connection to the VR that I wasn't making before, because just the hands isn't really enough. And I even point out in my video that VR hands are often, disembodied and see-through. I was trying to, say all of that to say that, like, look, Mxes' hands are exactly like that, and that's very specific for him. Why would he have those hands? Not necessarily why do we in VR have those hands, but that's a very good point, though. I'm so grateful that this person pointed it out and that other people who pointed it out. Anyway, moving on. This video is so casual, I'm getting anxious about how casual it is, and I'm just throwing this in here now. But anyway, I wasn't clear about how Cassie's dad dies and the difference between his physical body and his digital consciousness or soul. I did a bad job kind of explaining, like, oh, well, what ending do you think is canon then? I had a lot of people being like, it doesn't make any sense that he dies and his body is in the mask bot, he's controlling the mask bot, he's not, he can't also be Mxes. I think that what we're getting confused on is the idea that just because his body is in mask bot, that's what he is possessing. It really wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for him to be possessing Maskbot and literally give his daughter a mask. Take a mask implies Cassie Dads is not in control of Maskbot, because why would he want to subject her to it? But if he is, I would think it's more of a Doctor Who Dalek situation, if you're a Doctor Who fan, where basically the bot itself is only programmed to say one or two things. So it doesn't matter what you, as the brain inside, is saying, it's being translated as take a mask, take a mask, take a mask. That's how I would excuse that if I were trying to argue against my own point. But I don't know. I could be so wrong. There's other ways to interpret it, but I still wanted to better explain the idea that I'm saying he died and his body was stuffed into the mask bot, but his digital consciousness lives on because it was attached to the neural network. To me, it's more that his digital consciousness is in the system and able to move about in that system, which is why he's able to inhabit Mxes as a separate entity. I hope that makes sense. But to put it in short, his physical body is in the mask bot, but his digital consciousness or his soul is in Mxes, depending on how you look at how things are moving in the franchise right now. This next point is awesome and honestly provides what I consider to be a much simpler and more straightforward explanation of the Mystic Hippo's line. Have you ever looked at your hands? I mean, really look at your hands. And I just didn't know this. So it was not something I ever could have put in my original video. I wouldn't have even thought to research it. So thank you so much to this person for pointing this out. The line about "do you ever look at your hands" reminds me of something one of my teachers said, which is the difference between lucid dreaming and regular dreaming is in dreams where you aren't in control, you never really look at your hands. Whereas when you're in control of the dream, you do. If this is a reference to that idea, Mystic Hippo may be telling you you're currently dreaming under the control of the Vanny mask at minimum and possibly completely unconscious, such as in Sword Art Online, and need to take control of your dream in order to escape it. What else can I say? I researched this, and yes, one of lucid dreaming's tactics is to look at your hands in your dream. Like, try really hard to make sure you're looking at your hands in your dream, and that's how you start lucid dreaming, and that's how you're in control of what's going on around you. Like, that makes so much more sense. She's Mystic Hippo. Of course, she'd be talking about lucid dreaming. I still want to be right. I still want Cassie's dad to be Mxes because I think it's such a strong point. But if this is it, then this is it. You know what I'm saying? If this is it, then this is it. Lucid dreaming. It's trying to help him realize he's not really interacting with the physical world right now, and he needs to take off the mask and get it together. It's very, very good. That's all I have to say about that. Moving on. One of the biggest complaints, I suppose, about my theory was, well, this doesn't make sense because Mxes is trying to kill Cassie. He sends the animatronics to come murder her. Why would her dad do that? I refute this. I know that you don't have to believe what I'm saying, but I feel it's pretty well laid out in the video that Mxes is not trying to hurt Cassie. He's trying to protect her. That's why in my lead up to that video, I called him the protector of Cassie in Ruin, because Mxes' goal is to keep her from freeing the mimic. People were refuting this by suggesting that, well, the animatronics are certainly killing Cassie. And on one hand, sure, we only assume that they're killing her. And we know that Roxy certainly isn't malicious. When she recognizes that she's talking to Cassie and like pulls her out of the database, I understand that if Mxes is aware of the fact that the animatronics are shattered, then it would be weird for that to be her dad. To me, if he's just inhabiting Mxes and he's just being a protector and things like that, it would not necessarily occur to him that whatever he's calling over to Cassie is going to kill her, just that it would scare her out of the pizzeria. And I think that was my thought, was I was just like, he's just trying to scare people out of the pizzeria, away from the security nodes. He would hopefully assume that she would just be like, there's clearly danger here, and run. But, you know, we know that that did not happen. Moving on to my third theory that I want to talk about today, which is the crying child is not a biological Afton theory. If you didn't see that video, again, it's linked up there, but in that video, I am proposing that there are a number of ways that crying child could be not biologically related to William Afton, and thus really be Henry's child. So I wrote here, honestly, I just feel like I was a bit too wishy-washy in this video overall, and I would agree with that statement that I made. Me, agreeing with you, me. I wanted to offer all three perspectives, but because I rushed through writing to get this video out, I think my points came across in an unorganized fashion, and it became less of a theory and more of just throwing out a bunch of ideas. And then I wrote here, I may be being too hard on myself, but I just wanted to say that. And I did, because as much as I really do hold fast to the idea that crying child is not a biological Afton, I maybe could have spent another week or two on that video really polishing everything I was trying to say. And there are other reasons why that polishing that video would have been a great help to me in my theorizing career. You know, just as the thing that I do. I could be getting better at the thing that I do if I spent more time on my videos, which is what I'm trying to do now, which is why this video is more casual. So know that I'm working on things in the background that take more research, and I'm actually giving myself the appropriate amount of time to do so. Anyway, there are 2 points that I want to focus on. I'm going to do the quick one first, and then we're going to go into the other one, which I think that if you've seen that video and you noticed what I did wrong, you'll know what I'm going to talk about. But first, I want to talk about something that's a little easier to explain. I said in one of my points that adoption was one of the options. And one of my clarifications was, why would he only adopt crying child and not Charlie? And I refuted by saying, well, maybe he did adopt both, and just by the time FNAF 4 is happening, Charlie has already been, you know, taken care of. So people were asking, like, why would he adopt both and then kill Charlie but not crying child? And there is one very good reason for this. It's because Henry was a girl dad. You know, he had more affinity for Charlie. So if William was being particularly egregious or just trying to hurt Henry as much as he could, then that's a really good way to hurt Henry. It would also lend understanding as to why crying child would be so afraid and sad all the time, as if his sister died first and what he saw was something of that nature, or her being stuffed, or her body being moved. I don't know. But I don't want to speculate too much on that. There are reasons why he would go on and kill Charlie and then not kill crying child, because he learns about agony. He may have ended up deciding that crying child was more useful as a test subject. Basically, depending on the timeline you subscribe to, there are a number of reasons why killing Charlie and then not killing crying child would make sense. But there's one more very important thing that we have to go over from that theory, which really sparked the creation of this entire video. And that was me suggesting that the missing children's incident would come before the crying child's death. There's a comment on the screen now. The MCI is confirmed to have happened in 1985 and the bite happened in 1983, so not possible. And the fact of the matter is that I was objectively ignoring the date of 1985 that has been given to us through the books. I have reasons for this, but it really doesn't matter. I think I wrote this down. Yes. This is something that's just kind of always been a thing for me with FNAF, and I accept that I don't get to say things like this without providing further evidence. For me, the book dates are frustrating because we are often extrapolating data from these books and having to decide what is and isn't appropriate to extrapolate. The confusion comes from there are a lot of things that happen in the books that objectively aren't the way that things happen in the games. I think ultimately my issue is that the narrative sort of suffers from the missing children's incident being later in the timeline than Crying Child's death. There are ways that make this make sense. I think that there are just a lot of things about FNAF 4. There are so many hints and so many clues within FNAF 4 that suggest that the missing children incident happens first, just for the books to say that that's not what happened. And so I think my issue is that, like, well, you know, the Crying Child incident in the books isn't covered at all. But ultimately, putting aside all of my issues with it narratively, or the clues that we are presented with in the games that give you an idea of something that ends up being, I guess, a total misdirect, or I don't know, just confusing writing, the dates are dates. It doesn't really matter how I feel about the narrative structure of this story. Basically, anything I have to say, I could sit here all day and say, like, well, here's all my evidence about, like, why in FNAF 4 it really seems like the missing children incident has already happened, and, like, why that narratively makes more sense, and bring in a lot of different evidence points. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to trump a date we are specifically given. When we're given a date, we pay close attention to that. That's important. And I accept and understand that being so important, and for us to not throw away dates or pretend that they're not important just because they don't match our narrative structure, or a narrative structure that we feel like would make sense. But ultimately, I don't regret any of the content I've made. I just wanted to strive to do better, and I wanted to involve you in that process. I don't know what happened to the framing here. That is it for this week's video. I hope that this was fun. I know I was a lot more casual here than I normally am. Part of me is sure that's fine, and the other part of me is just terrified because I'm nervous. We fight through it. I should say we move through it. I don't fight my anxiety, I move through it. I don't allow it to control how we act, but I do allow it to exist without me being angry at my anxiety. Thank you so much for watching. Again, please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and for more FNAF and other internet horror content, I upload every Friday, and I would really love to have you become a part of the nervous system. I will be back next week, but if you can't wait, there are suggested videos on the screen just for you, and I also upload shorts. I make funny little meme content as well as some mini theories. I am often on my community page. Sometimes we do polls about what my next video is going to be about. I have people ask about other social media accounts that I have. I do have a Twitter that's She's Nervous and an Instagram that She's Always Nervous, but I don't post to Twitter because I don't support the owner of Twitter. And my Instagram isn't terribly active, and it's also Instagram. So I think that the best way really to keep up with me and what's going on with the channel is just the YouTube community tab. I'm also planning on hopefully starting to do live streams soon, as now I've finally unlocked the ability for people to super chat and things like that really just make it more of an engaging experience for you. I'm still working out the logistics of that because I have a busy life. I have a job and I have hobbies outside of this, and trying to juggle them all as well as keep my house in order is a chore in and of itself. But I have one more thing I wanted to show you today, because the cats get a lot of attention on my channel, and I don't only have cats, so I want to show you something, or someone, rather. Zeke! Where's my good boy? Where's my good boy? Zeke! Good boy, come here! This is Zeke. He also has anxiety. And most of the time when I'm filming, he's just asleep on the couch or upstairs on my bed. So there's a lot of FNAF cats out there, but not a lot of FNAF dogs, so I wanted him to get his moment in the sun. Aren't you just a very sweet young man? Yes, he is. And now that I put him down, he really wants attention, so I'm going to go give him that. But thank you so much for watching. Okay, bye! As always, please forget to like the video. Just forget about it. Who cares?